Welcome to the Fox Carolina Whether or Not and to What Degree podcast. We're doing it a little differently today. We are all in our respective homes coming together to talk a little bit about the weather and how this kind of unique situation has affected us. Meteorologist Nicole Pape live at home right there. You got the two kids are being handled, I guess, right now by Aaron.
Yeah,
but if they want to pop in, they can.
We almost had the baby, but he's fussy, so Aaron took him for us.
Well, anytime he wants to join, he can contribute however he likes. And then, of course, we have meteorologist Ben Dorenbach, who we appreciate on your day off being here with us.
Absolutely.
Yes, and we're familiar with your background, Ben, because you've been doing the weather from home for quite a bit. And meteorologist Isaac Williams, also remote from home. Great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here. You know, I've had a couple times where somebody said, "Why don't you move that tripod in the corner?" I'm like, "That's my guitar. I can't. I have nowhere else to put it." So yeah, happy to be here.
Well, we're learning so much about everyone when they work from home. You can just kind of see the stuff in the background and like where their cozy space is. But most of the time, Isaac and Ben have been working from home. Nicole and I come in, and of course, we're keeping the space really clean and social distancing. And as we swap out, we wipe everything down. But we're doing this podcast to talk about how crazy the weather has been lately and how it actually has thrown our schedules out. Really, Isaac and Ben weren't even supposed to come in the building, but we've had team coverage of these big events that have been going on. And we're going to talk about that coming up.
Yeah, there are so many conversations, like even nationwide, about stations and meteorologists doing remote work, having to get back to the station, because I think the officials are saying, listen, COVID-19 is a big deal, and it's obviously something we have to take really seriously, but the more imminent threat on those crazy weather days is the weather, and that's the more serious threat to people's lives. So it's been something that, we've had to adjust to on a whim almost weekly in the last few weeks.
Yeah. Exactly. We've been really lucky this week that we haven't had to really do that. But I'm going to kind of just go around and ask each of you kind of how this has affected how you do things. I mean, as a weather team, obviously, many have been working from home. Starting with Ben, what's the adjustment been like forecasting from home and doing your presentations? It's something that you probably thought you'd never do in your career.
No, I don't think anyone really thought they would do that in their career. But forecasting from home forecasting itself really isn't that much of an adjustment just because of technology and our websites that we access. So that part is nice. But, accessing our work computers with all of our extensive graphic systems, that's a bit of an adjustment. I mean, the most difficult thing, the reason why we have to go in studio for severe weather is because we have to manipulate graphics live on the air. And at home, it's not quite as smooth of a process just because our at-home laptop, or at least my at-home laptop, doesn't have the capabilities as our, multi-monitored systems have at work. So that's the reason why you see us in studio during severe weather, just because, those monitors have their own special capabilities. So, that's why we do that. But when it comes to quiet weather, I will say this, it's pretty much almost exactly, we can do almost everything from our home laptop with our graphic systems. So we can pre-make everything and we can show everything. The video might seem a little bit jankety on the air, but at least we can show everything from home that we would be able to at the studio. So that part is nice. But when it comes to active weather, there's no other way to do it but to be in studio.
Yeah, team coverage, and when you can actually be together and be discussing the different elements of all the storms. And let's bring in Isaac, where, again, we've been doing a lot of storm coverage together. And then, on the flip side, when it's not as crazy, you're home, but the morning show is so much about interaction. And I know that's probably been really tough during these last few weeks.
Yeah, we've toyed around with having me in a box, but, I'm basically a field crew at home. So there's an inherent delay. It's harder to have that, back and forth little, quirky interactions with all the team members. I still try to get one in every now and then, but as Ben mentioned, on a quiet weather day, our routine is basically the exact same. We wake up, we forecast, we build graphics, we do the show. The first time when Nicole took a week off in April, the little staycation, had to adjust a little bit. I think hardest thing for me is that I see myself in this little box on my phone, and I'm obviously constricted, and I get on the green screen again, and I have all this room.
Yes.
And I forgot. I was like so stiff at first, but it's certainly been, a crazy thing. Has been mentioned, never would I in a million years think I would sit here in an apartment chair and do actual TV weather from home. So.
I know. Who knew you'd be bringing all of the upstate mountains in Northeast Georgia into your living room every day, but we appreciate that you're doing it. Nicole, I know you and I really our routines haven't been changed a whole lot when it comes to going into the office and whatnot. Obviously, we're being super careful. As a mom, I know that this is a super stressful time. Just tell us a little bit about kind of what you've been going through the last few weeks and how you've had to adjust with all of the regulations, our new normal.
I mean, every time I go out, I wear a mask. If I'm not, if I'm around any people at all, if I'm pumping gas or running to the store, a lot of my day has just become focusing on being even cleaner than I feel like I was before. I get home from work, I immediately change clothes. I don't touch the kids. I take the shoes off, leave them in the garage. We have a baby that's maybe starting to crawl in the next month, and his hands are just all over the floor. I can't bring any of these germs inside, just not knowing. So a lot of my day has become kind of maneuvering around like, hey guys, I'm home. I love you all. I'll see you in 5 minutes once I get all cleaned up. Being at the station's no different. It's quiet. It's really quiet. It's eerily quiet in there. We miss having everyone around. In a normal day, we would turn a corner and see 10 people working on other things. Now I come across one person, Margaret Ann. She's the only one I come across, and we are separated by about 30 feet. We're on the opposite sides of the studio, and she and I just talked about the fact that even though we're both there and we're very lucky to still be able to, get out of the house a little bit and have a little bit of normalcy, we forget that the other one is over there because it's so quiet. So she and I aren't even interacting as much as we used to, just because you're kind of tucked away in separate corners doing your own thing. So it's been really strange, but I'm thankful that, we are an essential business because we are able to give people maybe a piece of normalcy in their day, even from afar, just keep the morning routine going for ourselves and for our viewers.
I think that's a big deal. Yeah. And we're the same way on evenings. I miss your husband so much. He would always make Cody and I laugh in the evenings. And of course we miss Tori, and Cody and I are the same way. We're good buds, but we get to a point where we run out of stuff to talk about, and we're so separated in the studio. We're just like, where is it?
Well, and minus the fact that no one's doing anything. So we don't have stories to tell or things to share. We're just like, we're working and we're going home.
I know. And it's just, I feel like, I think everyone's getting that burnout of, at least on the news end, just constantly talking about COVID. And for us, of course, when all this started, luckily the weather was fairly quiet, but then obviously it ramped up big time. I was out with bowel surgery. It was very unexpected. And you guys are all so awesome to cover everything. I'm just so grateful that during that time, the weather was calm so that whether you were a 3-man team, it wasn't so crazy. I come back and boom, I feel like my nickname should be Isaac Williams because I brought the crazy weather.
Kendra, this has happened your whole career though. When you had Stella, things were going crazy. When you had the twins, things were going crazy. You have surgery and things go crazy. I mean,
it's always when I come back. Exactly. Well, and that's what gets me to I wanted to just run through and recap everything that's happened, because yesterday was the 1-month anniversary of the Seneca tornado, along with many other tornadoes too. But of course, the Seneca one was the most notable. I'm going to start. I want to throw this to Isaac quick because I know you were doing some research on the outlooks leading up to some of these big events. I remember you telling me that weekend before, as we were doing Facebook Lives and updating beforehand, said you really haven't seen a setup like this in our area since you'd been here. And really not even when you were in Alabama and Mississippi, this was a setup that would have rivaled some of the big ones there.
Yeah, 100%. I at first when I was seeing the numbers, I'm like, okay, there's always this one road model run or two that spits out this outlandish setup. And then we just kept seeing it. I'm like, well, we don't want to, scare everybody. But I'm like, this is something that we don't see all that often. And our outlook from the Storm Prediction Center, if you follow those, ended up getting up to enhance that night. of Easter and into the overnight hours. So, as you mentioned, those numbers would grab anybody's attention. Ben up in Iowa, the severe weather chasers in Oklahoma, people in Mississippi and Alabama. Like, it was an exceptionally rare setup, and to cap it off in the middle of the night.
That was the scariest part, was seeing it come in so late. And I'm really thankful that we had that kind of heads up, that it was something that was kind of being hinted at from the models and the numbers in the days prior, because had something like this come, the day of, or even just a few hours before, where things really came together, it would have been even worse.
That's the best part about having so much technology, is I do think that many lives were saved because of the advance notice. Ben and I were in studio, and I think we both knew it was going to be a really long night when we had one little shower develop. Now, am I mixing up my nights, Ben? Was this the night that we had the one little shower develop?
This is a different night, I believe. Yeah,
the
Seneca night was a pretty solid certainty that there would be. It's like, I think I remember I said to you at some point, Kendra, that I would be very surprised if we didn't have one tornado warning.
Well, and what I mean is, we had that little shower that developed right after the 10 o'clock news, and we were doing a Facebook Live, and then all of a sudden they warned on it tornado-wise. I think
that's right.
Was that night.
That's correct.
If that little shower had started spinning like that, holy cow, when that line got here, we knew it was going to be big.
Which, that was just ahead of the main line. So, I think we knew from that one little spin-up shower, if you want to call it that happening before the main line, that the main line, when it moved through here with better, shear and other conditions that it was moving into, that it was going to make a mark, and it did, and then some.
Yeah. And there have been tornado confirmations leading up to, I think it was Monday of this past week, where we had Greer confirmed. It was the 7th tornado of the day near Lake Robinson. Seneca obviously hit with the EF3. Pickens in Northeast Georgia, we saw a confirmed tornado. So it really affected a good chunk of our area. And then eventually, once it got to Spartanburg and eastward, not quite as prolific with that. But it's certainly an event that I won't soon forget, probably never will in my career. It was so unprecedented for this area, and especially to happen at the time of night it did. It's not like it happened, Nicole, at midnight. It happened between 3 and 5, when just about everybody is asleep. It started moving in a little before that.
Right, exactly. It was incredible to see. And what we were able to see on the air at watching those storms develop, and pulling the different, data pieces in to show the viewers. It's the first time in my career, and I've been here for 7 years, that I have seen debris that clearly on our maps. And it was breathtaking, because we're sitting there talking about it and trying to give people as much warning as possible, but to really see that and to know exactly what's going on the ground without even having to call and get confirmation from someone who's out there. It's a scary thing for us to see and have to then discuss on the air and give people very clear warnings about. So for me, that was a really intense, I've never lived in Tornado Alley. I've never, really experienced long-standing severe storms like that. Like, that lasted. Mm-hmm. So for me, that was definitely is one that I will not forget.
Well, and that's why team coverage is so important, because I remember being up at the weather ball and discussing the storm in a different element. And while at the same time, Isaac was in the weather center, and he picked up on that debris signature, popped it up behind me, and was like, Kendra, we have a tornado on the ground, no doubt, debris, tornado on the ground. Right, Isaac?
Yeah. And, once we saw that, it was something that it is, I've seen before in Mississippi and Alabama, and I know Ben has in Iowa, but it's so surreal, as Nicole mentioned, just to see that stick out. If you were watching our coverage that night, there was no question that, something was happening. And, that tornado, I believe, was on the ground for over 10 miles. And the widest part of it was about 600 yards, 6 football fields, wide. So that's, insanity for here. And, EF3, first one in 26 years in the upstate, and the first overnight EF3 in this area ever, according to the Weather Service. So
yeah, it was Spartanburg 94. I think was the last one, right? 94, is that it? That's 26.
Yes, I believe so. Yes, and then there was an EF3 in Rabun County, Georgia, back in 2011. But in terms of the upstate, yeah, it's been a couple decades.
Yeah, and that tornado was the one that was kind of the remnants of the supercells going through Alabama on April 27th. So I remember that day very well too. Well, just in the interest of time, we're going to get through the next few events, but it was pretty crazy that I think we had a couple other events in between that were fairly minor, but the next major one happened on April 25th. It was it was a Saturday night. It was the supercell parade across the upstate, and not trying to make light of, but it seriously looked like a train track of supercells that moved through. And we're lucky that it was just one tornado that night. We don't ever want to see tornadoes, but we had 12 tornado warnings on that night of April 25th. It was a Saturday night, and the tornado that was confirmed was in Greenville County. It was near Cherrydale. But in covering all of that, I know, Ben, we were texting back and forth that afternoon. You and I were alternating doing Facebook Lives, and you texted me saying, like, look, these storms in Georgia are already starting to exhibit the structure of supercells, and they certainly held that and got even more intense in our area.
Yeah, I mean, I remember those cells in Georgia when they initialized, or when we first saw them on radar. That was not your classic loaded gun setup for tornadoes compared to, say, the Seneca night. So obviously you have to, treat them a little bit differently. But when you see, velocity signatures, even though it might be really high up in the atmosphere, because our LCLs were not that low, which is something like the cloud base, when it's not that low, usually you wouldn't expect tornadoes, even if you see some rotation in a cell. But I remember looking at those and just texting you, like, I'd be an idiot if I didn't text you to let you know that, these cells are not looking good. I don't like this. And the thing is, Isaac can chime in here, because I really loved when you put out, I forgot what the equation was, when our LCLs lowered by the night. Basically every tornado warning that was issued during the day of that event, I don't think we had a ground confirmation of the tornado. And the thing is, it's so rare for us to have a low precipitation supercell form around here. So those thunderstorms are a lot more photogenic. So we got a lot of viewer pictures of, wall clouds, shelf clouds, things like that. But I remember at night, we were thinking that, once our temperature cools down, our humidity is going to come up. So I wonder if that would lower the cloud bases to where we could get, a tornado finally on the ground. And it turns out that's exactly what happened. So that's why we had to take those storms so seriously.
Yeah, Kendra, you mentioned like they look like spaceships. We were getting picture after picture. And, when Ben says low precipitation, it's not meaning that it's obviously not raining or hailing, but it's so clear. Like there's a clear separation of the rain and the hail and the potential tornado. And we won't get into the nuts and bolts, but I hope to do a presentation on this at some point. But this is the loose equation. The number on the top was basically, I calculated there was roughly about 250 meters of a drop in the cloud base in 3 hours. And, we hypothesized that doesn't sound like 250 meters could mean a hill of beans to most people. But when you're talking about cloud bases, that could mean everything in terms of actually getting a storm to produce.
Oh, absolutely. When you're talking about, we had reports through the evening before it completely lowered of wall clouds, of funnel clouds, but never the touchdown until we finally got to after dark. And I don't remember the exact time of it, but it was well after the sun had set.
It was just after 9 o'clock, I believe.
Yeah, in Greenville County. That was crazy. And then we've had some less dramatic, but still tornadoes happen. April 29th, we had a warning that was fairly brief in Anderson County. I want to say again, this is why I'm glad you're here to correct me if I'm wrong, but this was the 15-minute tornado warning that came out. Real quick one. I was on a Wednesday evening, or maybe a Tuesday. It was April 29th. And it was it spun up very quickly. It was a night that we had some other damaging wind, but it ended up producing a tornado in Anderson, a weak tornado. And then after that, we had May 4th, which was a very crazy night. All of us were part of this one. So in the evening on May 4th, we had a rogue tornado warning. I say rogue, it was something that was it was well in advance of the main line, and models weren't picking up on any kind of explosive convective activity. So it was a Monday night. Big time hail moved through Spartanburg County, including spots like Welford, really got a lot of hail. And then a tornado warning was put down. However, tornado was never confirmed with that storm in Spartanburg. But that happened, and that, got our attention, and we went on the air and we were covering that. But then later that night, Nicole and I covered a beast of a line that came through that produced a lot of wind, Nicole. And we had a lot of wind damage reports the next day, because really at the time, so many folks were at home, or, it's hard to see the kind of damage at night.
I mean, you went home at 4:30 in the morning that next day. I mean, you were there all night into the morning with me. The morning show started at 4:30, and I think you probably had just left a few minutes prior. And it was only around then that we started seeing the damage reports in the wake of the storm, because people it was good that they were hunkered down at home, like listening to this wind come through. And I have to say, probably outside of the overnight Seneca tornado time, this was probably one of the times where when we went Facebook Live and we're talking to the viewers both on the air and behind the scenes about this, that we saw the numbers of the people that were awake and watching tick up over 1,000 and 2,000 people at a time. And it was great to see that, because we knew people weren't on the roads. We knew they weren't out and about. They were ready and home and listening to the safety precautions, because it doesn't have to be a tornado warning to be damaging. I mean, the forward motion, Kendra, of that system was like 65 miles per hour. It was traveling at highway speeds, and the wind within it was, at the same strength. So you think about how easy it is for that to create damage.
Absolutely. And then luckily we could get people all clears pretty fast once it moves through, but it was scary there for about 10 minutes in each individual spot.
You stepped outside, actually, just as the line was about to get to the station. Talk to us for a second about what that was like, because I didn't even want to go out there.
Oh, me? Oh, you're talking about me when going outside? Oh, yeah, that's
before it got really dangerous. Of course, you were inside when it was dangerous.
Yeah, I went and did Facebook Live, and we've shown you probably, we have tarps outside of our station, because in case we ever have to go outside to do the weather or do the news. And the wind was picking up so much that I actually thought that it was going to collapse. I mean, it was so bad. It didn't, luckily, but it was such a strong gust that I was like, okay, no, we're not showing anybody the outside anymore. But yeah, it was a very intense night. And I think this is getting to that point where all of us on the weather team and everyone who lives here was starting to get severe weather fatigue. We'd had enough. And if that wasn't enough, the next day, Ben and I got to cover some major hailers. We didn't have any tornado warnings on Cinco de Mayo, but we did have some thunderstorms that rolled through, lots and lots of reports of penny-sized, quarter-sized hail. But Ben, what was interesting was we do these Facebook Lives, and I think everyone just kept saying, are you kidding me with this? Like, can this just be over? I was just glad that it wasn't, at least we didn't have any tornado warnings that night, but it was a lot of hail, and that's typical for this season.
It is. Yep, we're approaching the typical hail part of our severe weather season. And let me just say to the viewers who are commenting those type of things on those Facebook Lives, like, are you kidding me? Things like that. Believe me, we were thinking the same thing. So like we echo your sentiments as if we didn't need anything else to deal with. But yeah, I think we had up to golf ball size hail in some places. I remember, I don't think I've heard as loud of a sound at the station as I heard that day. And we've had some pretty strong thunderstorms. But when it comes to hail producing thunderstorms, and we didn't really have that big a hail at the station. I think we had penny size.
Do you remember Cody ran out into it and went and got the hail? Oh. Of course, Cody ran out into it. I was like, Cody, just sit down. You're fine. But he went over. Yeah. So he went, but seriously, you're right, Ben. It was like penny size, maybe even less, but it came down so heavily that we looked up and just thought, oh gosh, I hope our cars are okay.
Yeah. Yep, that would have been my second bout with hail since living here. But luckily the hail here wasn't as big as the last time, which we had golf ball size hail a few years back when my car was damaged. So but the thing is that only missed us probably by about 10 miles to the east. So it did not miss by much.
Yeah. And that same night, thankfully outside of our region, but Chester and Lancaster counties in the state had two separate touchdowns on the south side of Charlotte. So, not to wish any bad upon any other county, but thankfully we finally missed one. you know.
And it looked a little funky when it was moving through Union County too, that same storm. But yeah, it just didn't produce until it got to Chester, and we hate it for them, but just, for our viewers' sake, we were glad that everybody was safe. And I want to go back to you quick, Isaac. We're going to be wrapping this up in just a second, but looking ahead to, you're the one who's actually on duty right now, with your tie on and everything. You just looked at the latest forecast. Fill us in a little bit about what could be Arthur. This does, again, I'm going to preface it saying we do not expect any impacts here, and really hardly any for the coastline. But it's interesting that, like Ben said, I think this is the 6th year in a row that we could get a named storm before hurricane season even begins. What are you thinking right now, Isaac?
Yeah, so we've been watching, and actually I randomly follow the Weather Service in Key West, Florida, because why not? And they tweeted this morning that this was at 8 o'clock on Thursday morning, the time May 14th. Since midnight, they've had 3 inches of rain in 8 hours. So obviously this storm is going to have a lot of moisture. Thankfully, it's expected to remain offshore. And we can be thankful that our storm chance, even though it's going to be more of a summery storm chance, nothing severe looking by Sunday and Monday of next week, that same system should be able to sweep this to the east. And been just talking about some rough surf conditions perhaps for the Carolina coastline. But, we just reopened the beaches, so I don't even know how busy they'll be.
Right.
But that's basically it. We may see a little bit of a breeze, some elevated surf issues, and that's going to be it. Thankfully, I think if this happens all 6 years, the A-named storm has largely been a non-issue.
Yeah.
That I can remember anyway.
Yeah, and that's what we'll certainly be hoping for. But I think all signs point to not an issue for the Carolina coast, or not a big one at this point. We'll keep you posted.
And the name looks to come sometime between Friday night and Saturday morning.
Great point.
As far as, when development would be enough to see that. But yeah, it just, thank goodness, not something we have to, really be on call for yet.
Yeah, and we'll of course keep you posted. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I know every one of you has pulled a lot of extra hours this last month. So thank you for taking the time to all get together today. And we'll continue to, I don't know if we'll do our next podcast like this, probably do another one in a couple weeks. So probably it will be social distanced in some way, but good to see everybody. We never get together as an entire team. And like I said, we'll all have dinner together once this is all over.
Cannot wait for that.
I would love it.
Seriously.
All right. See you guys soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.